in biology. For today, which is investigating fermentation. Previously, we said that fermentation occurs when we have a microorganism, like yeast over here, poured or mixed actually with warm water in the presence of sugar, and we checked what happened last time in the previous lesson. And again, let's go through it. We have the microorganism yeast with sugar and warm water. We mix it all together with whatever we use it like in baking or making bread or anything else. We cover it to prevent the oxygen from getting to it. After a while, we have the dough here. We just cover it with a lid or anything that you want to. What happens after? It's like we have here, we've seen that the dough has risen. What caused the dough to rise? The microorganisms here, like the yeast when it's fed on sugar in the presence of warm water, which is moisturized, it makes these yeast grow. When it grows, it actually rises the amount of the dough over here and causes the carbon dioxide, which is responsible, the first one is responsible for actually rising the dough, and also the release of ethanol. Because when you uncover the lid and you come and you smell the dough, you will sense a bit of alcoholic sensation. Okay, the yeast. What is the yeast? The yeast is a simple organism or a microorganism. We use it for baking and brewing. What is brewing? Baking, I'm pretty much sure that you all know what is baking, like making pizza, making pastries, like brioche or whatsoever. Brewing here, it's like when you make alcoholic drinks, but how do you manage to do them? The first thing that we have is a container. We pour in some cereal grains, could be barley, any sort of crop, and we soak it in water. After then, to be fermented, what do we mix it with? With yeast, because it's a microorganism. If we just soak grains in water only, nothing will happen. But when we mix it with yeast, it will be fermented. Further then, we will have production of alcoholic drinks, which depend on the source of sugar. So, here is sugar. Okay? The production of alcoholic drinks here, when we said it depends on the sugar, on the type of the sugar, that means we have several types. Like what? The sugar used in the process. If I'm actually trying to make some wine, what do I use? I use grapes. So the sugar from grapes, when it's fermented with yeast, it actually gives me wine as a product. Meanwhile, if I want to make beer, I would use crops like hops and barley, fermented with yeast, and afterwards I would have something called beer. We use fermentation in the production of gasohol, what is that? Remember when we said in chemistry that we do have fuels? And fuel here, when I make it like specifically, I have gasoline with alcohol. The combination of gasoline with alcohol is called gasohol. So here, another usage of fermentation is in the production of gasohol. Altogether, what do we use fermentation for? We use it here for fermentation, and we use it for brewing. Also, we use it for the production of gasohol, which is a mixture of gasoline with alcohol. Mixing alcohol with fossil fuel makes the non-renewable fossil fuel last longer. What do I mean by the word non-renewable? Non-renewable, it actually means that once I use this fossil fuel, I can no longer have it back again. Like what? If I burn coal, I'm making barbecue. I burn coal. Can I take coal back? No. So here, this is a type of fossil fuel that is classified as non-renewable fossil fuel. If I add alcohol to it, it may last a slight bit longer. But for an example, as a renewable source of energy, that means it never ends up like the sun. Okay? The next lesson is comparing aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Also, previously, we have described that aerobic respiration is actually a sort of reaction that we have with the presence of oxygen. Meanwhile, the anaerobic respiration here is the absence of oxygen, and we said previously also that runners or athletes usually, or football players like Ronaldo, they use anaerobic respiration when their muscles need amount of energy in a faster way. So practically your body goes and uses anaerobic respiration in order to have that energy that they need, particularly at that time. The purpose of any respiration, in general, why do we need respiration? Because we need it to release energy in a form that an organism can use. Both anaerobic and aerobic respiration release useful energy. So it's not just aerobic respiration, more likely as both of them. The amount of energy here differs from each one of them. For an example, aerobic respiration is using glucose and oxygen both to have a complete process of energy. Meanwhile, the anaerobic respiration here uses only glucose as a reactant in its process. The aerobic, the one that has oxygen, is 19 times more efficient, that means it's better, at generating energy than the anaerobic respiration. Meanwhile, the anaerobic respiration here generates the energy more quickly than the aerobic respiration. Example, when you sprint, that means when you run fast. Those athletes, when they actually not jog, but more likely run, you need to generate more energy quickly. So your body here uses anaerobic respiration. Here's a quick look about the animal cell. We have the cell membrane here, we've got the cytoplasm, we've got the mitochondria and the nucleus. The cell membrane is the outer wall or the protectant for the cell. Meanwhile, and actually is like what do we call it? Oh yes, it controls what comes in and out of the cell. Meanwhile, the mitochondria, we said it in the first lesson, we mentioned it, sorry, that it's actually the powerhouse and it's the source of energy for the respiration process. And here is the cytoplasm, the jelly-like liquid, which most of the chemical reactions of the cell happen here. And this is the nucleus that controls the cell activity and contains the genetic material. We will have more of that in details in the upcoming year, inshallah. Okay, the anaerobic respiration takes place in the cytoplasm. This is very important for you to know, that the anaerobic, the absence of oxygen respiration, takes place where? In the cytoplasm. Meanwhile, the aerobic respiration, the one that contains oxygen, it takes place where? In the mitochondria, the house powers. Okay, another thing that we always hear that enzymes, they take a major role in these chemical reactions that happen inside of your body. What are enzymes? Enzymes here, they are protein by nature. They are proteins in nature. What do? The enzymes here, they help to speed up the chemical reactions inside of your body. So once you have, like for an example, you ate some food and your body or your stomach particularly wants to digest that food. How does the digestion process happen? The digestion process happens is by your body sends these enzymes to the site of the digestion and breaks down food, starting from your mouth when there is an enzyme specifically is responsible for breaking down starch from the carbohydrates that you actually ate. But never mind for now, just focus on the enzymes are proteins in nature, they speed up the chemical reaction, and also anaerobic and aerobic respiration, they both have enzymes which they break up the glucose into, so in order to release the energy that we want. So as an overall, we had the comparison between the aerobic and anaerobic respiration. by which one contains oxygen, which one not, which one has the most reactant, like the aerobic here, it has glucose and oxygen, the anaerobic has glucose only, and which one is faster than the other one, which one is much better than the other one, and all that. The last lesson for today is understanding the importance of plant. Why do we grow plants? What is it that we get from plants? Plants here allow us to survive because we depend on them. But how do we depend on them? We use them as food. They give us raw materials for fabric, fuels, and medicine, because we extract most of our medicine from herbs. And what are herbs? They are plants. Also, as a decoration in our gardens, we love decorating our gardens by plants to make it look more lovelier. Okay, why plants are important? Why? What makes those plants very important? What will happen if I don't have them? The plants actually remove carbon dioxide from the environment or from the atmosphere and releases oxygen into the atmosphere. Have you ever felt the difference? Those who actually do not live in the centre or the capital of the country, and those who actually live in the countryside. For an example, we're talking about the UK. Those who actually live in London will have an air which we call it slightly polluted. Meanwhile, when you go to the countryside, you can sense there's a fresh air. Why? Because in the countryside, you will have more plants and trees. Meanwhile, in the city, you will have it in a small amount and also mixed with the fuels or whatever of pollutions. Afterwards, there were a Belgian scientist called Jean-Baptiste, who just sort of thought that he would run an experiment that involves a willow tree to know exactly the importance of plants and what will go on if the plant was suited in a suitable environment or not. So the experiment itself, he took a plant, a willow tree, and planted it in the soil. So here is the willow tree, here is the pot filled with the soil and the plant, and this was at the beginning of the experiment, and this was 5 years later. You can just tell the difference. At the start, here, the measurement or the weight of the tree here was about 2 kilograms, and the soil was only about 100 kilograms. After 5 years of this experiment, the plant or the tree has grown because he kept regularly watering it. So after 5 years, the whole tree here became 80 kilograms, and the soil only just decreased by 1 kilogram only. So the conclusion here, all of the wood, bark and roots had grown during the experiment must have come by the plant using only water, because I mentioned that he watered them regularly only. But there's another thing. Do all of the plants have their trunks or their roots inside of soil? No. There's another type of plants which we call them hydroponics, which is also a method of growing plants in water using mineral nutrient solutions, but the roots here are not kept in the soil. Thank you for listening, and I hope you understood the lesson for today.